Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Collective Podcast. This is episode 11. Thank you so much to our YouTube viewership, our Anchor listenership, our Spotify listenership, and the listenership on all of the other DSPs. We are Anthony Carter, Michael Tillery, Rodney Saucier, and TreVon Hopson. Trey is not with us right now. He'll be joining later, most likely. If not, catch him next time. But we are ready to get to it. So thank you once again. We're going to start this off talking about the U.S. women's national team, the soccer team that has been much maligned for actually requesting equal pay to the men's national team, and they have brought court cases, and the latest case is not even going to be heard. It was just dismissed with no cause, or without cause, I should say. And what I'd like to know from you guys is, first of all, what you think about the case being dismissed, what you think about their request in general, and what you think about the women's national team. React.
I'll go first.
Well,
Hey,
so
listen, man. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're even talking about something like this. Especially about the landmark Title IX case way back in the day. We should be at a point where equal footing is for all. The women's national team has been one of the more successful teams that we have had in terms of international play, regardless of sport. It's like how I kind of see it as Venus and Serena are almost bigger than men's tennis. You know,
yeah,
same thing with the U.S. national team. Media wise, we may put the men's team out there a little bit more. For obvious reasons, but there's no way that they aren't the most successful team we have outside of USA basketball, right?
Right.
I don't
Right.
think it's even a conversation about that. So as much as they have done for women's sports, and what as much as they have done for girls, aspiring to be them, they should be thoroughly compensated without even any debate about it. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous again, and we're even talking about this in 2020. It's a shame that women have to fight for equal footing as much as they have. We're seeing what's happening in the WNBA and and other sports, and it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It makes us look bad as a country. It makes us look bad as a world. That they aren't on equal footing.
Absolutely.
yeah. To Mike's point, I think I think Serena and Venus says it all. I mean, you can just look at the endorsements and realize how big they are for tennis. You don't see the same thing for Roger Federer or some of the other guys who who play on the men's side. I mean, the women, for me, just my opinion, are what holds tennis together at right now in this past decade, or maybe even the last 2 decades. There hasn't been a men's player to make you feel I have to see them play. I have to see what's coming next. Um, there's no one on the men's side doing something so extraordinary that you feel like they're must see TV. They're just players. Um, you never know what's going to happen in a Serena match. Whether you seeing some kind of crazy serve that's hitting records, or you want to see what she's wearing that day, something makes you tune into her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it makes the game exciting, even if you're coming to see her fail, because there are plenty of people that are coming to see her fail, and her sister, but more so her, because she's more outspoken and she has that personality that I'm sure rubs some the wrong way. Doesn't rub me the wrong way, but it definitely rubs some the wrong way. And people come to see her fail. And regardless of why you come, you come. So I think it goes hand in hand with women's tennis. There's no one really exciting on the men's team to make them must-see TV or make them the bigger draw, because I'm sure it's based on the numbers for attendance. And if you base it on the numbers for attendance, the women are selling out probably more often than the men. I mean, people love the women's team. I think they should be marketed much better so that they could be put out front where kids can get a chance to see them a lot more in the off season. The kids definitely need to be connected to who these women are, so that they can grow up with them. I mean, we grew up on Venus and Serena.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up with Tiger, basically. So,
not to take away from anything that you're saying, Rob, but tell the truth. You grew up on Althea Gibson. You did not grow up on Venus and Serena. So now I'll let you continue.
So, television is always trying to capture that young audience to allow them to see, see things on television as early as possible, and to get used to it, to make it a household name. So by the time they're adults, the foundation is laid. They have that viewership. And they have to do that for women's sports. They have to put it on bigger platforms. They have to push it harder. They have to do more deals endorsement wise with some of their superstars. I think that would really take them to even a higher level. But for whatever reason, and I'm sure we know what that reason is, they're not doing it. They're not utilizing some of the people that they could utilize to lock in this younger generation and to grow viewership to make the sport bigger. Like if you want to see a women's basketball game, they'll show you the big ones. They'll show you UConn and Tennessee, or South Carolina and Baylor on a Saturday morning, whatever. But they're not showing those games at prime time at 5 or 6 o'clock on Saturday afternoon or evening. And if you're not on that level where you're top 5, you got to watch those games in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
They'll show them on a smaller network and 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m. You have to be a serious sports fan to try to catch some of these teams and see who's good and who's not. So that's my thought on it, man. They have to make sure that the game is marketed correctly, where these ladies can capitalize on what they got. Because right now we're at a golden age for women's sports. It has to happen now. We can't wait. You're seeing some of the best right now. I mean, there may never be another Candace Parker or some of the other females that, Maya Moore and some of these other females that are, currently in sports. Well, Maya Moore has taken a leave, but, Maya Moore, her skill level is sick.
What were you going to say, Mike?
I mean, Maya Moore would definitely be mentioned as one of the greatest of all time. Remember, the last century where they showed the images of the last century. Brandon Chastain, you know, um, took off his shirt and
Yeah.
showed her sports bra to the world as they went victorious. Um, that image is going to be timeless, and that alone should show the world how relevant the team was then and is now. And the image is, there's so much symbolism in it. Femininity. The imperative to show women's sports more provocatively, and I mean provocative in a loud sense. And this is, again, man. I mean, we're so challenged right now with fighting the power, and also showing the world just obvious stuff, like from high school sports to college sports, and their quest to be paid and all kinds of other things. Like, these are real obvious things that we shouldn't even be discussing. But it's I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, I want to write about Aaron Rodgers. I want to write about women athletes. There's so much that I want to write about, but I feel like that I have to be so centered on race right now because of the obviousness of us all, the just the lack of common sense when it comes to it. It's the same thing when we talk about women's sports, and it is not. They shouldn't be challenged to try to market their sport more. It's on us. Now we have to sit down and watch it. What's the difference? I mean, if you watch the games that they play, the technical skill is surpasses male sports, in my opinion. The only thing that the basketball game, the women's game, doesn't have is the dunk, and I think that's a great thing. We talked about it before. How this basketball is now the 3-point shot or the dunk. You don't have the dunk as prevalent in women's sports, so you can actually watch the game and see the pace and space of it all. It's the same thing with soccer. I mean, I'm not the biggest soccer fan, but I do watch it when it comes to the World Cup and also the Olympics. You want to see and learn more about the game, and you can do so when you have superior and elite talent on the pitch. And that's what this women's team represents. Here for us, and it's a shame that the sport haven't picked up. My daughter, and to give it a personal story, my daughter played 9 sports in high school, and the last one for her to play was soccer. The coach just came up and said, "Look, you're doing all this other stuff. Can you come out and play soccer for me?" She fell in love with the sport and became one of the best players in the state, and she hadn't played it since she was like 4 years old. It's a shame because on the other hand, when she was rising in softball, they took away that Olympic sport. I think that was one of the worst things that they could do to the game of softball, because it eliminated thousands of young girls from seeking a dream to play in the Olympics. I went to college with a girl who played on the '96 team. She used to play pickup with us, in the gym, in between classes, whatever. And she was an incredible athlete. And we were very proud of her to be on that team and to be able to bring home the gold. And because we are just not as enamored with women's sports, they eliminated softball. and I think it's going to come back. I don't know if it's back this year.
It's back.
This year. It's back, but
It's back.
It took now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It what 15 years, 16 years it wasn't there. Yeah. So I mean it's on us. I mean the man is on us. It's not up to women to market themselves. I don't think, because the apparatus is there. Before every Olympic team leaves, there is a press conference at various sites in America, and you get to sit down and talk to the athletes themselves and also the coaches and organizers, like for instance Jared Colangelo and USA Basketball. I got to talk to Kobe and Jason Kidd and Wade and those dudes. LeBron. It was a real great thing. They do the same thing for every other sport, but it just isn't talked about and branded, marketed as much as it should be when it comes to the women. I would pick up and get on a plane and go just to have the experience in my back pocket, to be able to talk to the greatest athletes of women's sport, regardless of the sport. It's just a shame that how successful that team is, that they will not be seen historically as relevant as their male counterparts, because we fail to enjoy and watch the greatness of them.
So I think that you guys both gave great commentary on this issue. And so I just want to give our viewers and listeners some background. So let me tie a couple things together. So Mizzo mentioned 1999. So speaking of the U.S. women's national team, so we're talking soccer right now. Mizzo mentioned the Brandy Chastain and taking off her jersey and showing the sports bra. So that was the 99 World Cup. That was here in the U.S. That was the U.S. winning on U.S. soil in PKs or on PKs. And Brandy made the final PK that put us over the top. And that was such an amazing rush of adrenaline for women's sports on the heels of the 96 women's Olympic team, the women's basketball Olympic team.
Yep.
After the failure. Well, I hate to use the term failure. After the incomplete run of the ABL, but leading into the 97 introduction of the WNBA, even though we wouldn't see equal pay in the WNBA. Well, we haven't seen it yet. Maybe it'll get here one day. But just that, like, the women's sports was on an all-time high in the U.S. going into 99. And then for them to win that World Cup, they immediately had one pro league start, and then they had multiple pro leagues. And you just saw that there were more and more people willing to or ready to put their kids into soccer, girls into soccer, with hopes of becoming part of the national team. And that's one of the beauties of soccer. You're looking at the World Cup as well as the Olympics. So each happens every 4 years, but there's a stagger, right? So you have 99, 2000. So then you have 2003 World Cup, 2004 Olympics, and so on and so forth. So you have two opportunities to shine on the international stage in soccer, and you have it in other sports, but it's just not as prevalent. And boy, did women's soccer become great to watch for so many people that didn't feel women's soccer prior to that. Now, my background as a journalist, I've told you guys before, I got started at UCLA. I started writing for NOMO, the African People's Student News magazine on campus. And then I started writing for the Daily Bruin, and I immediately picked up women's beats. I started covering women's swimming and diving, women's basketball, women's soccer, One of the coaches the actual head coach of the women's soccer team at one point was someone that was on the national team, and that was Joy Fawcett. She was on that 99 women's national team and other national teams as well. But that was such an influx of adrenaline, and women's soccer really hasn't lost that excuse me, that that not adrenaline, the momentum. They haven't lost that momentum. Now on the men's side, not knocking the men's side because men get paid a lot of money overseas, but there's an avenue for women to get paid overseas too. And then of course you have the MLS, the Major League Soccer, which is the avenue for the men to play professionally here in the States. But you've had a number of women's leagues, and you've had the women's team have unparalleled success. Whereas if the men's team makes an international semifinal, it's cause for national celebration just because they haven't won anything in 50 or 60 years. I forgot when the year that they actually won something, but it's been a long time. The women win all of the time. And what they're saying is, hey, US Soccer Federation, please pay us equally. We're not even saying pay us more, even though we're the bigger draw. Just pay us equally. So that portion of the suit against the US Soccer Federation has been dismissed. The part that says we're not paid equally. What is still alive is that we don't have equal working conditions. We don't have equal medical support. We don't have equal resources for travel. And there are a number of components to that suit that are still alive, but it's unfortunate that the equal pay portion has been dismissed. And I think those that bash this women's team need to really pay attention. They're not even selfishly saying, hey, we're one of the biggest international draws of sport for the entire United States, if not the biggest. They're saying, just pay us what you're paying the men's team. We get endorsements and all that, but pay us what you're paying the men's team. And I would challenge anyone to even name a men's team player. I can give you most of the women's roster. Now, I am a fan of it. I watch the men too, but I don't get excited about it like I get excited about the women's game. So I think that's important. I just wanted to bring it back to the U.S. women's national team and talk about exactly what they're looking for and what we are disappointed in, what came back. And then I want to go back to something that Rodney said when he was talking about tennis. He mentioned Venus and Serena and what they have been doing for the game for some time. And I will say that that's a great point for getting the women's national team. And that's what the soccer team is actually called, the U.S. women's national team, getting them equal pay on the men's side. I know we're talking about pro versus amateur, but what we're looking at is the women's tennis does have equal pay now. Now, they don't necessarily have equal endorsements and all of that, but that's, Steffi Graf helped with that. But Venus and Serena really, and it was Venus spearheading it and Serena trailing her, really fought to get equal pay on both sides. And there were other people involved, Lindsay Davenport and all that, but they have it. They do have it, because the women have been the draw. Now, I don't want to discount. I know that Rod didn't mention this, but I don't want to discount what Roger Federer has done for the game and, his Nike contract. And people do get up for Roger Federer versus Rafael Nadal. That's been a great back and forth for some time now, following the exit of Pete Sampras, and then now Djokovic is in there. But Venus and Serena, a draw for 20 plus years, absolutely changed the game. So I don't want any of that to be lost. Any of that to be lost. Mizzo mentioned the I know Rob mentioned WNBA too, but Mizzo mentioned pay and mentioned some of the strides that are taking place now. Well, think about the innovation of the WNBA with having the advertisements on their jerseys. They've been doing that for 10, 15 years. And the NBA just introduced that probably, was it 3 years ago? Yeah. So the NBA just introduced that. And so I'm sure they're getting way more money than the WNBA is getting. But I'm saying, look at the innovation of it all. Of course, it's been happening in soccer for decades, on and on and on. It's been happening. But now it's in pro basketball, and the women are trying to change the way that they are paid. And a number of things are happening. Strides are being met. I also want to go back to what Mizzo said about softball. When they took softball away from the Olympics, it absolutely crushed me, I stayed up so many late nights watching any U.S. women's softball game that I could watch, anything that they were involved in. And for them to take that sport away, I was devastated, and I know that they were devastated too. And I'm just happy that the matriarchs of U.S. softball and then of international softball in general didn't let the sport die. They came up with a number of U.S. pro leagues and stayed active, and the college game has continued to grow. And so the U.S. team, and they're not called the U.S. women's national team because that's specifically reserved for soccer, but the softball complement of our U.S. women's national team is as strong as ever. It doesn't have all of the legendary greats, but it has greats in the making, and I'm happy that softball is back for 2020, which is now 2021. But the team that is now is going to be the team that will compete in 2021. And shout out to Rachel Garcia, UCLA Bruin, who will be the ace pitcher on that team. So Trey has joined us. Trey, welcome back. We've been talking about the U.S. women's national team, the soccer team, and how the equal pay portion of their suit against the U.S. Soccer Federation was dismissed. And then we talked about the elements that are still alive. And Rodney and Mizzo started talking about what people have done, what women have done for other sports. They started talking about basketball. They started talking about tennis. So we've really been talking about the full complement of women's sports in the U.S. And they had differing opinions on what should be done to grow the games, grow the viewership, grow the participation. Rodney talked about it being marketed differently, marketed better by the powers that be. And Mizzo countered with, well, it's not on the women to advertise it better. You know, they're putting the product on the field. And then I stepped in to just bring it all together for the viewers and the listeners. So that's where we are right now, 27 minutes into it. Now let anybody that wants to talk get back to it.
One thing on that. First, I want to say, hey, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day. Thanks to all the viewers, listeners for coming in and joining us. What's up to my brothers right here on this podcast? I agree with what you said, Rod and Mizzo had said about the marketing part of it. The players, they do put in the work, and they work just as hard as the men. Their work ethic can be just as hard, as the men, but it's all marketing. Not to take anything away from it, but money is generated towards, and this is my opinion, the excitement. The main reason I think, just for example, that people go to basketball games. People go to basketball games because they want to see somebody get dunked on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They love the 3-point shot from half court. They love the physical part of it, And in a women's basketball game, you're going to get layups, with an exception of maybe one person doing a breakaway dunk or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it hard for people to come watch it, which sucks because you and I, AC, we've been to many women's basketball games all the way back with Lisa Leslie, Tina Turner, and all that. We were going to those basketball games faithfully, and they were very exciting. But at the end of the day, Lisa Leslie was the only one that would dunk. You know what I mean? Where in like today's NBA game, you got a person like Ja that people gonna go to a game. He'll sell out an arena hoping that he'll get one chance to dunk on somebody, and people will pay for that because they know what he is capable of. You know what I mean? So that's why it's hard, I think, to get like different marketing and people to invest in women's sport.
And you know what, Trey? I'm sorry. You had more. Okay, I'll respond after you're done.
But what I was gonna say, and that was just an example of like the basketball, aspect of it or something like that. But like women's soccer, that's totally different.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They're the best in the world. They're the best in the world, and they are putting in work time and time again, and they're achieving things that men aren't achieving. So yes, they should be paid, and they should, if anything, be paid more than the men, because they've proven that they can put in the work and they can do this time and time again. You know what I mean? So that's my take on it. So I know you was about to say something, but
no, lovely. You got no, you that was the thing. Like, because we talked about tennis being a great we didn't say this, but tennis is a great equalizer where you got a woman on one side and a woman on the other, and it looks much like a man on one side and a man on the other. So it's all about the excitement of whom you have playing. And if Venus and Serena at one point were the most exciting players to watch in the world, and now Serena is hands down the most exciting player to watch in the world, and she's done amazing things. They both did, but she's continues to do amazing things and surpass the watchability of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal and Djokovic. It's amazing, and I think that in soccer, I want to just dispel the myth that they can. You said this, Trey. I'm not countering what you're saying. I'm adding to it. Dispel the myth that they can't do what the men do. Like this, and this is not. They're not saying, "Hey, equal pay around the world." Like, let's start with the U.S. Soccer Federation. They're not even saying, "Hey, in our pro league, pay what the MLS pays," because it's two different leagues. They don't have anything to do with one another. What they're saying is, "Hi, U.S. Soccer Federation, who controls the funds, and we get equal pay to the men." Because all of the analytics, Rodney's favorite word, not all of the analytics show that we outdraw the men in stadiums and on television. Like this, it's not even close. So to Trey's point, should they be paid more? Yes. But back to my point, they're not even asking to be paid more than. They're asking to be paid more than they are getting paid, but just pay us equally. And that portion of their suit has been dismissed. And I think that's a travesty.
You know what, though? I'm glad you said what you just said, the latter part of it. Maybe they should be asking for more pay than
they should be. Yeah.
They should be asking for more pay than the men. Don't be subservient. We know that your draw is more than the men, so you should absolutely get paid more based on that audience. And I think that if they would have come out a little bit stronger, with fists and guns blazing, it would have been a more provocative point, because there would have been a debate across the nation, as this country loves to debate now, about who should be paid more. I think that is something that should have happened. Now, maybe they weren't advised to ask for more pay, but they should. How you doing? Yes, thank you. They should have asked for more pay. I think it would have been a great debate across America if the U.S. national team would have asked for more money than the men, and it wouldn't even have been a diss to men, because all they had to do was put up the numbers, But again, insecurity is a hell of a drug, So if them challenging the men in such a way would have been seen as men being lesser. And I think that that's really the issue here is about power, and the women wield power, and as everybody has said, the draw is larger, so it's pushing men into the background, and I think that's where the egos come in, and we're seeing as a result. The women's taking a back seat by not asking for more money, and it's very classy that they did that. But hey, sometimes you gotta speak it like you think it, and that they didn't do so maybe was the wrong move.
And they definitely need more sponsorships. Like during this whole COVID time, We've seen how many rerun basketball games, how many old baseball games. If you turn it on like the football network, you're going to see old football games and stuff like that. You see State Farm commercials. Why not do a commercials with all these women? And if they're marketed more, then more people are going to know about them. And you know, if something's on TV all the time, people attract to that. But they win, you hear about them on a small portion of Sports Center or on the local news. And then after that, you don't hear about them until next season, really. And that's a shame. And they're the best out there.
And so, I think that to that point, and I think you both make great points. And I think, but you know me, I'm gonna come in as a devil's advocate. So great point. But I think, Trey, it's deeper than that in this instance, because from a marketing perspective, U.S. women's national team members versus U.S. men's national team members, the endorsements are all on the women's side. And there aren't a ton of them, but they're all on the women's side. I think that this is a soccer problem when you talk about not the endorsements, the advertisements. I'm sorry. The advertisements. This is a soccer problem. We don't see the U.S. men's national team players on TV at all. We do see Alex Morgan quite a bit. We do see Megan Rapinoe quite a bit. We did used to see Hope Solo quite a bit. We've even Brianna Scurry has had commercials, and then there are like the up and coming players are getting commercials now on the women's side, but it's really a soccer problem, because when you compare it, really, no, it's a women's sports problem. So it's a women's sports problem, because like who do we see? We got a couple of Sue Bird commercials still, but I mean, we don't even see Diana Taurasi on commercials anymore.
Right. That was
we do. I don't know if you guys have caught it, but there's a Dove. What's the deodorant? It might be Secret. Sorry, whatever it is. But Swing Cash, who now has an executive position with the WNBA, is in a commercial with a couple other athletes, but they don't reference her basketball prowess at all. It's just she's actually in a boardroom, and I know that that's Swing Cash. Other people may not, but yeah, the women's sports in general are not being marketed. But I just wanted to say that in this particular instance, their equal pay request can't be tied to the advertisements, because they are outshining the men's side with the advertisements. It's just that soccer is not prevalent. Well, advertising soccer is not prevalent in the U.S. at all. And it's crazy, because it's the number one sport in the world. It's absolutely amazing.
There's also that football thing.
Go ahead, Mizzo. I'm sorry.
There's also that, you know, I think we have a problem here with soccer in terms of the actual name of it. You know, it being football versus American football. I remember growing up and people saying, yeah, we're playing football. I was like, you're not playing football. You know, that's not a football that you're playing with. I mean, we're taught to not almost, like, I guess this is a bad choice of words, I guess, discriminate against soccer because it's just the way it's named, you know. And you know, like even foreigners, when they come over here and they hear the word soccer, they're like, "How you doing?" It's like this is football, you know.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's an issue too. You know, I just think we as Americans need to have a broader scope of sports in terms of the globe, the entire globe, and the effect. Like the soccer is, you know, far and away the most popular sport in the world. You know, I do think that basketball will one day approach that because of this $54 million contract, media contract that they signed over the next 9-10 years. But you know, for right now, the sport is king worldwide. You know, it's really not even close. But you know, until you know we accept that the sport is bigger than America, you know, we won't get it.
I feel that's a great point, Rod. I hope you didn't lose your point.
No. I was getting ready to just kind of jump off of Trey's point because I know people like to see dunking in basketball, and I missed the interview. I guess the Instagram interview with Sue Bird.
I'll send
But
that link to you.
okay, but her main
It's in the
point
thread,
was
text thread.
that you have to put more money into these sports, especially for women, if you want to see a bigger production, because that's basically what it is a production. But my point is, there's Dennis Rodman proved that you don't have to be a dunker or offensive player to be marketed correctly and make money. Dennis Rodman's whole persona he made up himself with the hair, with the tattoos, with all of that, to get more money. He got a shoe deal out of it. He had his own shoe with Nike. He's a rebounder and got his own shoe with Nike for being basically, I don't know if you want to call him eccentric or what word you want to use to describe Dennis, but he proved that if you market right, you can attract people. And so I look at that across the board. If what Sue Bird is saying is if you put more money into women's basketball, they can make more money, but you have to put the money in. And these networks have to, raise the contracts and put money into this stuff. I mean, ESPN is showing horse right now. Horse.
Right.
They're showing Madden competitions. That's ridiculous. So it brings me back to a 30 for 30 I watched about Fernando Valenzuela and how he came on the scene. And just real briefly, the Dodgers, after they flattened all the land in Chavez Ravine, they were like the scum of the earth for that. You ran a lot of Hispanics out of their homes because they had enough money to say, we want that land. It sits in a nice location for Dodger Stadium. And the local government said, hey, okay, you got enough money to pay for it. We're going to run these people out of there. And a lot of Hispanic people protested, stood in front of the bulldozers, and they were run off. And they flattened all that land and created Dodger Stadium. So what the Dodgers did, according to this 30 for 30, is they said, we have to get these Hispanic fans back because they're a huge part of baseball. And they went to Mexico because they heard about a player in Mexico who was supposed to be the next big thing. As a matter of fact, the owner of the Dodgers told them to go to Mexico to find the best Mexican player that they could find anywhere in Mexico. Comb the country until you bring back the best Mexican player out there. So they went to go see this player, and as they were waiting on this player, a pitcher by the name of Fernando Valenzuela pops up, and he's throwing lights out. So they were looking for a different player, and they come across him. They bring Fernando to the States. They pay him peanuts, basically. And he's got this deadly screwball. And we all know what happened after Fernando Valenzuela and Fernando Mania. I mean, the dude took off like a rocket. And they marketed that screwball. They marketed the hell out of him. And they marketed him.
Looking stylish.
And the Dodgers were, then after that, the Dodgers were a household name again. And they had a huge fan base. And not only a huge fan base, but a huge Hispanic fan base. The same people that they had run out of the area to build Dodger Stadium were back on board because they wanted to see a guy who's from their hometown, home country, throw this pitch. So the same can be done for women's basketball, and for women's soccer, and for women's sports across the board. They have to find, and when I say they, I don't mean the players themselves, because that's not their job.
Not their job.
But
Just come out and play.
Whether it's the networks sending representatives, or whether it's the commissioner from the women's soccer or the WNBA, or even the NBA, who's basically a parent to the WNBA, they should be on board with this too, because they're invested, and they should send someone to find the best soccer player or the best women's basketball player from another country, trying to make sure that they invest in this player the same way they invested in Michael Jordan. I always tell people, Michael Jordan for me was great because he was the most marketable athlete in sports history. He had the look. He was tall, 6'6", long, slim. He had the physique, the bald head. I mean, once he cut the hair and went to the little earring, he became a woman's dream. Like they all of a sudden weren't looking for Al B. Shore no more. It was like the Jordan show.
Yeah, that's when dark skin came in. Yeah.
Yep.
And so and so they marketed that with his basketball. And if that's what it takes, then so be it. If they have to find the sexiest female player that they can find who happens to be really good in basketball, go find her.
Yeah.
Go find her. Put her on the equivalent of GQ magazine. And let people see her beauty, but at the same time, let people understand that she will rip your heart out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And grow the game and give these ladies their money.
Exactly.
You know, if like I said, with soccer, if they are bringing in all those fans to the stadiums, because the first argument was they don't bring fans in. No one wants to see them play. Well, women's soccer smashed that argument a long time ago. Smashed it. So who's getting that revenue? When they're packing those stadiums, who's getting that money? Because the girls aren't getting it. Who's getting it? Somebody has to be getting that money for them to say, well, we still don't have enough to pay you equally to the men. Yes, you do. You just sold this stadium out. So someone needs to come up with that money someplace. So it's crazy, you know, that they would dismiss that part of the lawsuit when that was the primary argument. That's beyond me.
Right.
And you said that there were no grounds for cause, or there was no explanation of why it was dismissed, AC?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, they just came back with like a straight, just no.
Yeah, just we're not even hearing that portion of the argument.
We're so primitive. We're so primitive in how we view things, because again, the distractions are always there that we can never even broach. We can never get a chance to really broach the subject matter of what is actually relevant. There's just so much stuff is just so convoluted that you can't even get to the actual topic to discuss. You know, this is crazy. How do you guys feel about, you know, what happened in, what was it, 2008 with Mahorn and who was it, Lisa Leslie? That brawl, did that kind of hurt the WNBA in terms of how it was viewed because of the perception of violence? You know, that was a huge brawl back then. I think it was Lynette Pearson. Yeah. And you know,
Mike, before we dive into that, can I just read you the judge's decision?
Okay, yes.
The judges. Yes. All right, so this is Judge R. Gary Klausner, who dismissed this portion. And to summarize, he said, members of the U.S. women's national team did not prove wage discrimination under the Equal Pay Act because the women's team played more games and made more money than the men's team. Now, here's his actual quote. This approach, merely comparing what each team would have made under the other team's CBA, collective bargaining agreement, is untenable in this case because it ignores the reality that the men's national team and women's national team bargained for different agreements which reflect different preferences, and that the women's national team explicitly rejected the terms they now seek to retroactively impose on themselves. This evidence is insufficient to create a genuine issue of material fact for trial. Okay, so I just wanted to give that to you.
I mean, it says it all right there. You know, I'm a anybody that knows me in terms of what I've written about. I've written about sports finances for a long time. You know, specifically the NFL and the NBA and CBAs. They're all online. You know, some of them are 500 pages or so, but people need to read them. You know, this is the reason why D. Marie Smith and his counterparts have really have. Michelle Roberts is great, but Smith and the MLB union heads caught a lot of flack for what they aren't negotiating. So I mean, it was really to the union rep. If there is a union in women's sports, I'm not sure. And I'm not up to snuff on that CBA, but if they weren't negotiating the right things, comparative to what the men were also negotiating, that was the problem right there, because it allowed the governing body to find a loophole and exploit it to their advantage, to where this thing isn't even being heard in court. I hope that that's really the conversation that's being had post that ruling, because these union heads, they need to go for the jugular every time and also see what the other sports are doing. It was crazy because in the 2011 lockout, a lot of players were actually calling me and asking me, they were saying, Mike, what are we negotiating? It's a shame. I feel bad for those ladies, because if that is the case, that they weren't negotiating comparative to the men, which is my inclination. I mean, I'm totally speculating here, but if that's the case, that is horrible. That is horrible for them, because when it comes to rulings like this, again, that's the first thing that they're going to think. You're only as good as what you bring to the table and what you ask for. Contract time.
Right.
So that's egregious, man. If that's the case. I apologize.
And let me give you another piece to this. So according to Jill Martin and Amir Vera of CNN, I'm going to comment on what Mike is saying, and this is from the CNN piece. And this is about the way that the CBAs are structured. So the women's CBA guarantees that players will be compensated regardless of whether they play a match or not, while the men's CBA calls for players to be paid if they are called into camp to play and then participate in a match, according to the summary judgment. So to me, it's like right there, it sounds like the women's CBA is better. But further,
that's something that
Klausner wrote that the women were asking for a court to conclude that the women were paid less than men because had the women been paid under the men's CBA, they would have earned more than they did under their own CBA. And he's saying, you guys had that opportunity, you rejected that CBA, you argue for something different in your CBA, so deal with it. I really have to dig deeper to understand how they would have been paid better under the men's CBA, because it seems like it says, it's whether they pay or not, whether they play or not, they get paid. But maybe it's like the actual per match rate is less or something. But it is unfortunate when the complexity of a CBA is not understood when it is being negotiated and signed. To Mike's point, Mike is someone who studies the collective bargaining agreements for all sports, so he's well versed in this.
Do they
So
have?
thanks for that.
Is there link? Is there a link for this national team CBA in that article?
Not in that article, but I'm gonna look for it now. So while I look for this, yeah, it's here. So I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you.
And then we could talk deeper about it. So going back to what you were saying about 2008, Rick Mahorn, Lynette Pearson, brawl. I don't want you to lose your thought.
Yeah, I mean that was just a huge stain. I mean, it was shortly after the Malice in the Palace, right? So basketball was on shaky ground at that time because of the perception. I think that it's my opinion that the notoriety of sports needs to also brand it, because like we grew up in an era where, and we talked about this previously, that the physical violence was just a big part of the game, and that's the reason why the lane was closed down for diminutive guards or any guard for that matter. So I don't see a problem with physical play. Obviously we're building to a society. I guess the perception of it is that we're building towards this this total physical is out. Like to be physical is like a no. So I don't know. I was asking you guys if that actually affected the game to where it kind of was a drop off after that. It was 2080. Well, I think it was Mahorn, Lambeer were the coaches in that game, and Leslie was pushed down when Mahorn was trying to help her up. It became like a huge brawl that we discussed for a long time, exclusive of the 24-hour news cycle. But do you guys remember that enough to have a view of if it affected the women's game?
I don't think it affected their game because just take the Ron Artest incident. That was probably one of the biggest incidents that happened in basketball sports. And that didn't hurt the NBA at all. I mean, their ratings went up because people want to see that. Jersey sales start going, you know what I mean? Ron Artest jersey sold out everywhere. I was one of the ones that bought it just because I wanted the jersey he had on when he had that fight. I'm guilty of it. I bought it. So it's a shame. And this was a question that I had for you guys because I didn't know. UFC women, is that equal pay? Because people love.
Well, I think Rousey was. Cyborg was. Okay. But I don't think that anybody else was even close.
Wow, and that's a shame. And people spend money on violence because that's what they like to see.
And they marketed the hell out of Rousey.
And they marketed the hell out of her.
Back to my point. They marketed her to death.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was on everything. She was in movies. She had commercials. They had her a calendar. She in swimsuit stuff and this, that, and other. And if they did that with a lot of players, it would bring more attraction to it.
That's exactly why I said it. I know people want to see dunking from the men's game and the women's game, and but you can market it. You can market these players and these ladies a different way. What if you have to use their sex appeal? And I'm not saying they should go out and play in bathing suits. I don't agree with selling them out to do it. But I mean, off-season stuff.
Point to that.
like some make swimsuit calendars or whatever. I think they did that. They were marketing Danica Patrick. Now, I'm not sure if she was making the same amount of money as some of her male counterparts, but they marketed her because
You
she was
talking
the
about
only.
the endorsements, or yeah,
She
she
was
Yeah,
was.
making more. She was making more than
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
but she was bringing fans to racing. She was, female fans. You started to see more females get into NASCAR and these other things. So, they had her do a swimsuit calendar or something like that, and some other things to try to jump a bigger audience into the sport. And these other leagues, they have to do the same thing. I hate to hear about that contract. It's like hearing Pippen's contract on a macro level.
Yeah.
You sign a deal, you grossly outperform it, and there's no way to renegotiate. And the women for a lot of these leagues don't have the leverage like Pippen had, because Pippen had leverage. He could have just said, "Hey, I'm not going to play until you guys redo my contract."
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't going to find another Pippen to put next to Michael Jordan. I'm sorry, they weren't out there. So he had leverage to do to get something accomplished. He didn't use that leverage. Because Mike was probably in his ear, knowing Mike saying, "Hey, you know what? It's going to mess up the team. You got to come back so we can keep winning," because he was thinking about his own legacy. But that's another story. But these women, for the most part, don't have that kind of leverage because, their base is already kind of fragile. And then if they sit and protest, it could already damage what they're trying to accomplish in the first place. They don't have anyone that's bigger than the game like Michael was.
So I think that Rod, boy, you raised some really interesting points here, and I'm so glad that you said that. I listened to a podcast quite a bit. That's an entertainment podcast, the Joe Budden podcast. I shout out to them, and they had a discussion recently regarding creators and who's got the leverage versus, is it the actual creator that has the leverage, or is it the entity that's putting the creator on? And they differed on their feelings, and it's interesting that Joe was definitely saying that the creator always has the leverage, and you can sign the leverage away, i.e. Scotty. But I'm going to say this, Rod, I disagree that in this particular instance, because we're talking about the U.S. women's national team, they've actually got more leverage than Scottie Pippen, and I don't think it's even close. They've got such solidarity in that locker room, and this even goes down, in my opinion, to the next up. If that team were to sit, then the entire U.S. women's national team farm system would sit. And then what do you do to the biggest draw? What do you do without the biggest draw in women's soccer? And so I think that going into the World Cup last year, they had just started talking about this, right? But we won't get to, and then they were willing to go ahead and go into the Olympics this year, potentially, which was supposed to start in June, and the suit is still in progress. But if this doesn't end up in their favor, they may not play in the 2021 Olympics. They may not play in the 2023. Well, I don't think it'll get that far, but because I think that they'll show their leverage when it comes to the Olympics. Now, I believe that in other sports they don't have the leverage, but they had it in tennis, Venus and Serena, and the like, and so they got what they wanted. I believe that the U.S. women's national team does have the leverage, and it's possible that on the pay side they did sign it away, but the suit is about much more than that. Like I said, the conditions, the training conditions, the travel resources, the medical resources. and all of that. But just overall, boy, this is one instance where the women's athletes, and especially because it's the entire program using their leverage. It's not just one person saying, hey, give equal pay to women who have partners or something like that. This is 28 people 28 active members on the roster are part of this lawsuit. And if those 28 sat, if the next 28 would also not play. And boy, that would be a super black eye.
Well, that's leverage but that's not leverage for what they're trying to accomplish as far as the money, because they're competing with men's sports. So the powers that be are going to say, well, if you guys don't want to play, we just won't have women's soccer the same way they did softball. And they're going to say, hey, we can't do that, Rod.
I don't think they can do that. I think that because of, obviously some of the consciousness that appears on a team, Megan specifically, that is what is going to be the move. That is the move to make, in my opinion, to get the world's eyes on what they're trying to accomplish. They have to strike. And it's going to usher in a new spirit for women's rights if they do so, because the governing body will be forced to address it. And if they just say to themselves, and there's no disrespect, Rob, but if they just say to themselves that, we're just not going to have the sport, man, it's going to be a huge blow to the sport itself and that governing body. I mean, heads are going to roll.
That's what I said. It will be a blow to their sport.
Mm-hmm.
And how do they recover from that? Because I'm with you. They should strike. They should. If they're not being heard and nothing's changing, they got to fight just to get a decent place to sleep at night, from what I hear from some players. The travel being so rough, they should strike. They should strike. I mean, it's bad enough that they're not getting equal pay, but you can't even get the same facilities and the same type of treatment as far as meals and what you have to pay for out of your own pocket.
You know what, Rod? I think I understand where you were coming from. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
You're thinking that this is directed at the U.S. Olympic body in general, right?
I'm thinking bigger than that. I mean, I'm thinking the big picture with networks, with everyone.
Okay, but this action is specifically targeted at the U.S. Soccer Federation. So it's not somebody who doesn't necessarily care about soccer who could say, well, women, go away. We don't care. This is actually the Soccer Federation, which doesn't want a black eye, which can't say, well, if you don't want to play, don't play. If it was maybe just the overall International Sports Federation the National Sports Federation for the U.S., whatever that's called, and it was all sports. Oh, we care about basketball more than that. We care about baseball and softball more than that. Right. We care about volleyball. No, this is the Soccer Federation that this is directed at. And so they have an allotment of money that the U.S. women's national team is trying to get a bigger piece of. So this is a soccer problem. And so that's why I'm saying they have all the leverage in this.
For a raise, and the boss is just telling them no.
Yeah. No, they definitely should sit. Definitely. And if it forces people to say, hey, these ladies are not asking for anything unreasonable, but you got a lot of chauvinistic men that will just say, hey, I don't care. Let them complain. And that's the problem. Right. I mean, I've been asked several times by different people, why do you do women's basketball? Well, don't you want to do men's basketball? Don't you have aspirations for the NBA? And I can honestly say I've never had aspirations for the NBA. So help me God. I've never thought I would love to be in the NBA. I've never thought that. I love women's basketball. Love it. I love basketball, period, but I love women's basketball. And I see some great players. But I've had plenty men to say, one guy even said, why you do that bush ball?
Oh, come on.
That's crazy.
You know, and I just look and I shake my head. Like, there's no reason to even give that a response.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom.
You can, and so on the bigger level, there are a lot of people with that same thinking that are holding these ladies back in power, in government power. And that's the bigger picture. If you start doing it for sports, where else do you have to go with it? And that's their thinking. And that's why they just would rather shoot themselves than say, hey, let's do the right thing.
My mom said something to me when I was younger, growing up, you know, and it kind of stuck with me because I didn't really understand it until it happened. She said, you know, you will not become a man until you not only respect but appreciate the birth of a daughter. And once it happened, it totally shifted how I see women. You know, because we are the first people that they love, and you get to see the women are they're emotional diamonds. You know what I mean? I don't know if that term has ever been said before, but you know, that's what they are. But you know, we as men need to fully appreciate who they are and what they contribute to our existence. And we just spoke about it the other day, you know, about Mother's Day, you know, about what women contribute. You know what I mean? To see them as second class is totally ridiculous. And you know, though we know that men do this, you know, and it's something that has been passed down through time egregiously, but you know, it's always going to be something that is noticeable. But you know, women have been shouting to the heavens emphatically, you know, since forever. So it's not about them protesting. You know, I mean, they have protested for equal rights, you know, for women's lib and you know, and all kind of stuff, suffrage, going back to 1921, you know, and further on through the 60s and 70s with women's lib. You know, it's something that they should be privy to, just as they should be privy to the boardrooms and all the executive decisions that further us as a society, you know, economically, socially, and otherwise, you know, and you know, this will be a telling time, you know, if Biden does pick a woman candidate to be vice president, because the focus will be on what women give us. Because if Biden wins the presidency and something unfortunately happens to him, you know, we will have a women's president. You know, so this all is the timing of it all seems to be upon us to where the strike, if they do strike, you know, based on what we're talking about now, if they do strike, then I mean, it's going to be a huge thing. You know, it's going to be a lot of stories being written about it in every major newspaper and every punditry panel that we've ever had, you know, regarding sports and the like, and especially social political, if that does happen with a woman's vice president. But I mean, this is something that needs to be spoken about. It needs to be addressed straightforward. You know, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday. You know, we have nurses here in the house for my foster nephew, and you know, this thing with Ahmaud Arbery. You know, when people talk about it, they shouldn't even be discussing the house that he went into. What should be discussed is the actual murder, the act. And we should not allow people to divert anyone from discussing the actual act. They have to stick there. As soon as they try to scramble and move away from the actual act, and all the distractions are going to come in and everything becomes convoluted. It's the same thing with women, you know, and same thing with this issue here. You know, it has to be about equal pay. You know, talking about them, not doing enough for themselves via social media and the like that people have been discussing these past couple weeks, is the wrong way to go about it. It should be stuck and focus strictly on the actual pay. And I will be critical of them because I love those women, that they should fully ask for the full value of themselves, for this to be something that is etched and written in time. You know, there shouldn't be a disrespect of themselves or like again subservience and just based on the discomfort of men. Try not to make prominent rich men uncomfortable just because they're seeking what they deserve. And if that doesn't happen, then it is upon their shoulders. But we as men, I mean, I'm not even including us into this discussion because I think we all have a common ground about where this should go. But if the governing body doesn't appreciate what women have done for soccer and specifically, then I mean, that's their cross to bear, and it's something that they're going to have to pay for.
Yep. And to your point, Mizzo. Oh, sorry about that noise in the background. It's my little guy.
You did, man.
Well, yeah, to your point, the reason we have the person in office that we have in office now is because more men voted for that person just because they didn't want a woman in office.
Period. Yeah.
That is the only reason. And let's just be clear. Women are stronger than men. I repeat, women are stronger than men. I do not know a man out there that would be willing to have a baby.
No.
There would be no traffic on the 405. There would be no traffic anywhere if men had to have babies. So I feel like if a woman can endure that, man, a woman can endure anything. And it's a shame that they're not given the opportunities that they should just because they're a woman. That's despicable to me.
Totally
Absolutely.
despicable.
So I'm gonna give you guys a hot take. Hot take from AEC 360. No sit down, no strike. It gets resolved. And I think it's because the US Soccer Federation understands. Now, the one little caveat is that they've got an extra year now because the Olympics are not starting in a couple of weeks. The Olympics will be starting in a year and a couple of weeks. So this will be resolved by then. I do think that the U.S. women's national team will get the other things that they want, and then I think that this pay structure, this CBA, will be revisited. But here's the other part. Here's the other part. The CBA is up in 2021, and the Olympics are in 2021. So you best believe if they have to ride this out until the end, it'll be quite different. That's the other side of it. It'll be quite different, and I don't know the month that it expires. I need to look that up. But the U.S. Soccer Federation has got to feel really, really comfortable with what's happening with the U.S. women's national team going into camp and into the friendlies and the other international competition heading into the Olympics. So I don't think we ever see them sit.
No, there will be resolution
for this situation.
The CBA is in accordance with the Olympics. There's no way that this won't be resolved before then, because they cannot, especially after what we're going through with the COVID and the Olympics this year. There is no way possible that they can risk those ladies sitting down as we are trying to restart the world on an Olympic front. There's no way possible. you're right. I didn't think about that, but that, this it's not possible. They just won't risk it. They'll try even to not strong arm, but bring up points to the ladies to make them agree to maybe some things that they don't want to agree upon, just to get things started. They might throw some caveats too as well, but I don't think that there's no way. I think there's no way they strike.
I think it'll happen as well. And just from a business side of it, a lot of times, a business organization try to throw their weight around, like it does nothing to them to say no. It's to see if you say no and they agree with it, you won.
Yeah.
But if you say no, then you can see how strongly somebody is about something. They appeal it. Then you can say yes. Then it's no love lost for them. You know what I mean? So they see it and they threw it out right away. And I think when it's resurfaced, then, they will come to a
strong agreement.
Right. Exactly. Like if I got to come back now, I'm asking for more.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I think that this was indeed extremely powerful and extremely necessary. And I'm glad that we got the opportunity to get the word out about the U.S. women's national team and women's sports in general. This won't be the last time that we will talk about these topics. In fact, still love to get Dawn Staley and Nikki McCray on the show together. Would love to talk about the University of Tennessee and the University of Virginia, where they played their college ball. And I'd love to talk about the U.S. or the women's national team, or USA basketball, and them being on the USA basketball together, and also visiting Sports Club LA and playing against Trey and I. Talk about the ABL, the Richmond Rage versus the Columbus Quest, and then now Dawn Staley coaching South Carolina, where she's won a national championship and finished the season this year as the #1 team in the country. And then Nikki McCray, who was the head coach at Old Dominion and has now been hired as the head coach at Mississippi State. So now they're both in the SEC, and they'll have some competition there. Love to have them come on and talk about women's sports. Just pitching that. Please come. Please come. That being said, thank you again for the YouTube viewership. Thank you again for the Spotify and Anchor listenership on all the other DSPs. This is episode 11. We appreciate you guys coming back time and again. You are invaluable to us. You are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That being said, this is the time of the episode where we go to the closeout, and we'll do last in, first out this time, and we'll go with Trey. Start us off on the closeout.
I just want to say thanks to all the listeners out there. We really appreciate you. Just like, just mirroring what AC said. And please do us a favor. Tell a friend to, come in and listen to us. We got some good topics that, we talk about. And if any of the listeners out there have something that you want us to talk about, let us know. And, we would definitely try to touch on it. So we have new news coming from our governor here that we think we might be on lockdown through August, or through the end of July, August, sometime like that. I don't know what's going to happen, guys, but, I just want everybody to be safe. And if they're putting us on lockdown like that, it's for a reason. Think about if you think you're the strongest person in the world and nothing's going to happen to you, if you're one of the ones that think you're invincible, think about your kids, think about your neighbor, think about your mother, your sister, your father. Think about them. It's really hurting in the older community, the older generation, I'm sorry. But yeah, and if you are going out, social distance, stay masked up, keep your mask on. You are not invincible. Avoid large crowds, and let's get through this pandemic. Let's get through it safely, and let's be able to get through it to talk about it. the survivors are the ones that can, live another day to talk about it. And that's what we want to be able to do. Talk about it, be healthy. If you have kids, please keep them masked up and stay inside as much as possible, because kids are our future and we need them here to, make this world a better place. So love you all, man. You guys stay safe. Again, that's pretty much it, man. Just be safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rod.
Today kind of throws me back, hits close to home, because my mom, for a lot of people who may not know, a lot of people know my mom, Dr. Carruthers, but she's a pastor. And she hasn't shared with me everything, because she's always said that if I tell you some of the people who've treated me badly, you look at them a different way, and I don't want to change the perception of some of these people for you. But she did tell me how big of a struggle it was for her to just break into the ministry as a female pastor. And all the things that, for all of the sometimes negative attitudes about pastors, and oh, they take your money and da 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 da, which for me, I've been around some great pastors, and I know that stuff is not true. There are crooked and there are great in any profession. I always tell people, and you just act accordingly. But some of the struggles that she's had to endure with people who were close to her, who did not want to see a female pastor, and all of the things, it just brings me back to the moment of her going through this type of stuff. And I also have a daughter, who plays sports and was actually pretty athletic. I don't know what the future holds for her. So I know that when you have a lot of negative people who don't want to see you succeed, in my honest opinion, God always puts one key person out there for you to help you get what you want to get. And I think that someone in power can help these ladies achieve what they want to achieve. I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point, something will happen in their favor, allow them to get what they want to get. So all I can say from that is believe in yourself. Don't sign bad deals. Just looking at the present day. You have to look at the future and understand that more likely than not, you're going to get better with something. You're going to get through the kinks in the first couple of seasons of whatever goes on with starting up something, and you're going to get better at it, whether in business or with sports, and in life. And you're going to learn things that make you better. And with that being said, I hope those ladies, if they get a chance to redo their deal, they understand that from that point forward, everything is going to, for them, sports-wise, is going to get better. And they have to sign a contract accordingly. They can't sign it with the thought of their current status. They have to expect that something is going to grow, and that they have to be mindful of not to just sign your life because it seems as though they just took what they thought at the time was a pretty good deal because they had nothing, and they didn't understand that they would get even bigger. So with that being said, whether it's ladies or whether it's up and coming athletes, don't sell yourself short. Go get what you can while you can, and stay safe, everyone.
So thank you for that, Rod. Shout out to Lauren, his daughter. Shout out to Reverend Doctor, Pastor Dr. Jared Carruthers. I had to remember how to say it correctly. Shout out to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. So everything that Rodney said is serious, but now I have to joke about Rodney giving a shout to Star Wars with him being C-3PO on the mic. Listen, if you never understood, first of all, Rod was having computer issues, so that's why he's on his phone, his Android. So this is episode after episode where his Android completely kicks the bucket and he sounds like C-3PO. Hello there, R2. I mean, actually, he doesn't even sound as good as R2 as C-3PO. I mean, I don't know what's happening there, but yeah. So yeah, very important. I do want to just throw this out there. I champion reading the collective bargaining agreement. Now I want to read both of them, to Mike's point, because I want to say that the women's national team, this is 2020, that they've been huge for 21 years. And so this collective bargaining agreement was signed in 2017. I don't know that they're bigger now than they were then. Like they're just as huge. So I'd like to see what it was. And they felt when they signed a different CBA than the men, that was them negotiating. Like they did this on purpose. I just feel like they missed something or something fell through the cracks, but I don't think this was them not believing in themselves or not believing in what they could produce. I could be wrong, Rob, but I don't believe this was that, because it was just in 2017 and they were already huge. This is not they weren't an unknown entity, but I could be wrong. That's just my take on it. Continuing with the closeout, what you got, Mizzo?
I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Trey was saying about this COVID situation. Look, y'all, just because you want to go back outside and continue your lives, it doesn't mean that this stuff still isn't out there that will kill you. It will kill you. It's killing so many people. We're over 1,600,000 cases now. Is it that high?
Yeah, it's high. Yeah,
it's really high. Like, come on, y'all, be smart. We shouldn't be so entitled that we're only thinking about convenience as opposed to dying in alone and being buried alone, so where your family can't even have closure for you. Do not be stupid. If you need to get some alcohol, they got curbside stuff, and some people even deliver. Don't be stupid. Like, don't be stupid. It seems like everything is returning to normal. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, these numbers are rising and rising, continuously rising, and we're not normal. We're not normal. Well, what's giving you the impression that we're normal right now? But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Today in 1985 was the move bombing in Philadelphia, on 6221 Osage Avenue. I will never forget the smell after that place was bombed. And, 6 adults and 5 kids died, and the whole block was almost burned down because they bombed those people, and, the conversation was not about any type of amendment rights back then. It was about we need to kill these people. We need to get them out of here because it seemed like there was the compound. In '78, there was an officer that died. And that became the premise for them bombing them. And years later in '85, it's a stain on Philadelphia. And I think that the mayor who co-signed or greenlit the bombing, Mayor Good, is trying to get the city to issue a formal apology to those people. They bombed American citizens. And like I said, the result was 11 people losing their lives, including 5 kids. It was horrible. And like I said, the smell was horrible. It was something I'll never, ever forget. But this was just 1985. This wasn't 1950. This wasn't 1963, 68. This was 85. I'm 17 years old. I'm starting to learn about life, and it started by me watching it on my grandmother's little black and white TV in the kitchen, and for us having to go to Philadelphia and from Chester and smell that horrible smell. Okay, and all of this sirens that were just piercing and it seemed like they were just going through your soul. Because you realize that these people were just eradicated, and, the city, it took a long time for the city to recover. This is also coming on the heels of, Mayor Rizzo's police brutality stuff that was going on here in Philadelphia. That was horrible, man. They was beating brothers up like crazy, and this was the 70s and the 80s. This wasn't that long ago. And we talk about police brutality and everything that happens now, but this was an edict from way back in the day. And Mayor Rizzo was notorious for, it was basically a stop and frisk back then. But then go further, and then the people were bombed on their roof. The helicopter dropped a bomb on the roof, and the roof caught fire, and it basically backfired. And a lot of people just lost their lives. I didn't realize that today was the day, but it seemed like every time this year it enters my mind. So I just looked it up, and it was today, 35 years ago. It's something that the city, specifically Black folks, look back on and understand that we do not have the value of the dominant culture, unfortunately, because when we pop off or we do anything that is on a fringe of the laws, we are taken care of immediately. And that's what happened that day on Osage Avenue. I was, it's bittersweet because, of course, you want to live through history and you want to see history, and it was obviously a historic moment, but so many people died, and the people who did not die were thrown in jail. A couple of them have died in jail. A couple of them are scheduled to be released soon. But it's just a Black guy on the government of Philadelphia. And I hope that a lot that comes out of this is some conversation, and that formal apology is issued ASAP. A lot of people are saying that, Mayor Kinney is just not going to do it because there's so many other bigger issues to talk about as we try to, survive this COVID situation. But it's something that needs to be addressed. Something needs to be just totally talked about objectively for both sides, because I think that it would help broach a national discussion on the amendment rights that we're seeing now. And again, what I said earlier about Ahmaud Arbery, we need to focus on the actual action. So we need to also focus on the actual action of the bombing. And the bombing, not what these people did, what the actual bombing, just like we should do with every other incident. So the conversation remains sane, is actually able to be discussed without people trying to run and avert and hide in the shadows of distraction. But yeah, move bombing, 1985, 6221 Osage Avenue. I just will never forget that smell.
May 13th, 1985. You guys are viewing and hearing this on Friday, May 15th, but just know that we recorded it on May 13th. So when Mizzo says, 35 years ago today, he's talking about Wednesday, May 13th. The move bombing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 6221 Osage Avenue. And many view that as the day when Philadelphia bombed itself. And it's very sad and disgusting and all of the adjectives that you can come up with. And if a formal apology is being considered, boy, let's cut to the chase and get that out, because that's not much anyway. But I got you, Trey. That's not much anyway, but that's something. Britt, we'll be done in 3 minutes. That's something. So let's at least get that. But I definitely appreciate that historical perspective, Mizzo. So for my closeout, I'll say this. I'll go with this day in history also, and I'll give you two things. The great Stephen Morris was born on this day in, what year was he born? 1950. So the great Stephen Morris is 70 today. Amazing. Stephen Morris, you guys may know him as Stevie Wonder. Rod would just call him friend, classmate,
You call him grandson?
We call him Stevie Wonder. Nice try. 1981, Pope John Paul II survived an assassination attempt in Vatican City. You may not care. I happen to be Catholic, and I happen to have visited Vatican City before, so that's kind of dope that I was there. Yeah. So on this date in history, 1950 and 1981. Overall, you guys mentioned COVID-19. First of all, thank you again, YouTube viewers, Anchor, and Spotify listeners on other DSPs. We appreciate you. Please look down on YouTube and hit subscribe. Hopefully, the other people on this podcast have subscribed. Hopefully, the other people on this podcast are following on Spotify and Anchor. I don't know if they are. Hopefully, they are promoting this podcast on their social media and in their personal lives. I don't know that they are. I can go check. But if they're not, hopefully they will start today or get back to it today and understand that this is very important for us to get out. That being said, COVID-19 is real. What is wrong with y'all people? Listen, Brianna, my fiance, gets so mad at me because every time we go into the world, whether it be to go to the grocery store real quick or go to Sam's Club real quick or go to Costco real quick, I am talking about the people who are not wearing masks at all, nutso people, or the people that think it's okay to wear the mask on their mouth. What about your nose? I don't care if you are a daredevil. I'm not, as it pertains to my life. I'm a daredevil in other areas, but not as it pertains to my life. So when you don't have the mask covering your nose, you are putting me at danger. I understand that you don't care about your own life, but you're putting me in danger. You're putting my family in danger. So when you see me run away from you, when I see you coming, know why. And then the people on my path, my running path in Rancho Cucamonga, California, hey, just because we're allowed to go outside doesn't mean I can't catch this thing from you as you're walking by me. Put a mask on or get the heck out of the way. You guys are so rude, and it's not just about rudeness because you're actually putting lives in danger. Please read up on how you should wear your mask and wear it the right way or stay your butt in the house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shout out to Baby Hair 562.
Ooh.
Shout out to Trey Hop, and shout out to Hardcore Peace. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys. Please keep coming back. We love you.
We out.
Love y'all.